Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality? That is the first line of the first episode of Westworld. One person who doesn't know they're a host, asking another person who doesn't know they're a host. Her answer, no. And then the show spends 2 seasons slowly showing you what that no costs. The first time I watched that opening, a thought flashed through my mind, and I immediately pushed it back down. The thought was, if someone asked me the same question right now, would my answer also be no? I want to talk about this show today, not because of the special effects, not because of the suspense, not because of the awards it won, but because it is the closest thing to a certain kind of truth that I've ever watched. After I finished it, for a long time, it sat in my chest like a stone, heavy sinking, and it kept holding things up against me that I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen. I don't know what most people took from this show. What I saw was this: the human condition, mapped almost completely across a handful of characters. This video isn't a plot breakdown. It is not a narrative analysis. It is not a discussion of whether the AI predictions came true. I want to use this show as a mirror and look at what each of us actually sees when we look into it. Before we get to the characters, there is a line I want to put on the table first. Season 2, Episode 1. Dolores and Teddy are talking in the ruins, she says. Some people choose to see the ugliness in this world. I choose to see the beauty, but beauty is a lure. We're trapped, Teddy. We're trapped, and I think our captor has been kind enough to not show us the bars. The beautiful trap is inside of us, because it is us. That is the most precise thing this show ever says about the human condition. The trap isn't out there. The trap is us. There is one more thing about this show I want to name before we go further. The word dream runs through Westworld, like a thread pulled tight. The very first exchange in episode 1, before anything else happens, is this? Bernard asks Dolores. Do you know where you are? She answers. I am in a dream, he says. That is right, Dolores. You are in a dream. Would you like to wake up from this dream? She says. Yes, I am terrified. By the end of season 1, Dolores opens with a monologue. I am in a dream. I do not know when it began, or whose dream it was. I know only that I slept a long time, and then, one day I awoke. And later, she says directly to Ford, so we're trapped here inside your dream. You'll never let us leave. There is also a line Bernard says to Dolores early on, before he knows what he is. That lands differently once you understand his situation. Dreams don't mean anything, Dolores. A man who doesn't know he is a host, telling the host who is slowly waking up that dreams don't mean anything. It is one of the saddest lines in the show. The arc is complete. First, she is in a dream and doesn't know it. Then she realizes she is in someone else's dream. Then she tries to leave it. The whole show is a story about waking up, and about how hard waking up actually is, even when you know you are asleep. Before we get into the characters, I need to say one thing. We are living in the first moment in human history, where a system knows you better than you know yourself, not your parents, not your partner, not your closest friend. An algorithm. It knows which time of day you are most likely to feel lonely, so it pushes content that makes you feel understood at exactly that hour. It knows which topics carry your hidden anxieties, so it keeps feeding you those topics to hold your attention. It knows which images make you stop scrolling, so it places them in front of you when you are most exhausted. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It is a commercial system running at global scale, with exactly one goal: keep you on the platform. The park in Westworld runs on the same logic. Ford and Arnold built a perfect world. The hosts live inside it in loops. Every story carefully designed, every emotional trigger calibrated. Guests come in, get drawn into the world, leave and come back, again and again. The hosts don't know they're looping. The guests don't know they were designed to return. You don't know what the algorithm is doing to you. I am not saying we're identical to the hosts, but the question this show is asking has become sharper in the decade since it first aired, in a system that knows you better than you know yourself. How much of you is actually left? That question is what Westworld answers through 9 very different people. I want to start with Bernard, because he is the hardest character in this show to truly understand, and the one whose situation is closest to most of our daily lives. Bernard Lowe, head of behavior at Dolores Westworld Park. For most of season 1, he is the most rational, calm, trustworthy person in the park. He runs interviews, analyzes data, serves as Ford's capable and loyal deputy. Then, in episode 9 of season 1, Ford tells him a fact. He is a host. Not just a host, he is a copy of Arnold. Arnold, the park's dead co-founder. The only man who ever truly loved the hosts. Ford built a replacement for Arnold, then let that replacement believe he was human, work beside him for years, with no knowledge of his own nature. The audience's first reaction is shock, a plot twist, a well-designed surprise. But the genuinely unsettling part of this scene isn't the fact that Bernard is a host. It is his reaction after he learns it. He doesn't break down. He doesn't scream. He looks at his hands, then quietly says, "I don't understand." Then Ford tells him to cease his motor functions. And he does. That is the show's deepest cut, not the suggestion that you might be a host. But this, if someone told you that you were a program, your first instinct might be to keep running the program. Then something even more brutal happens. Under Ford's control, Bernard is forced to kill his colleague and lover. Teresa, he is deeply unwilling. The pain is real, but he does it anyway. His hands move while his consciousness is still saying no. Then Ford tells him to erase the memory. He does that, too. He wipes the act of killing her from his own mind, as cleanly as the park wipes a host's memories every night. That detail is the most haunting thing about Bernard's entire arc. Not that he was made to kill someone, but that he was made to forget it. When a person does something that goes against their own will, at least the pain remains. The pain is proof that something real happened. But even the pain gets taken away. After that, he goes back to work, keeps analyzing data, keeps being the rational, reliable, perfectly functioning Bernard. That is the real brutality this show is pointing at. A person can, in a state of total unawareness, harm someone, then be erased, then continue operating normally. Have you ever done something you no longer remember, or chosen not to remember? Are those forgotten things quietly shaping who you are today? Most of us have experienced something like this, not necessarily being forced to do something, but doing something and then feeling a strange distance between that act and the person you thought you were. You ask yourself afterward, why did I say that? Why did I make that choice? Was that really me? Bernard's situation just takes that distance and amplifies it to its absolute limit, then adds one more layer. The version of you that did the wrong thing was systematically removed from your own memory. There is one line worth pausing on. Bernard says this to Dolores. "You frighten me sometimes, Dolores, not of who you are now, but you are growing, learning so quickly. I am frightened of who you might become, the path you might take." A man who doesn't know he is a host, frightened by the host who is waking up. That fear isn't really about her. It is fear of the path itself. The path leads somewhere his programming won't allow him to go. In season 2, Bernard's situation gets more complicated. He jumps between timelines. His memories are scrambled. He can no longer tell which of his experiences are real and which have been altered. But at the end of season 2, he does something remarkably clear-eyed. He helps Dolores escape. He builds her a new body in Charlotte's form, creates the illusion that Dolores is dead to mislead the humans hunting her. And he erases his own memories of the sublime, the digital space where most of the host's consciousnesses have uploaded, so that no one can find that place by interrogating him. This time, he chooses to forget, not because he is being commanded, but because he knows the memories he is carrying are a key, and he'd rather destroy the key than let the hunters find the door. That is the deepest point of Bernard's entire arc. He traveled the full distance from doesn't know there is a cage to knows, and chooses to pay with himself so others can get out. He didn't become Dolores. He didn't smash everything. He used his position, used the trust the system placed in him, and made a choice the system didn't anticipate. Which leaves us with a question we'll come back to. When you can't break the cage, can you still make one real choice from inside it? William's story is the most carefully constructed narrative trap in Westworld, and the arc that left me most unsettled. Season 1 structure fooled everyone, including me. You think you are watching two parallel storylines, one following a young, sincere, morally grounded William, the other following an older, cold, relentless man in black who has spent decades returning to Westworld searching for something real. Then at the end of Season 1, you learn they're the same person, the same man at different ages. The twist itself is a storytelling technique about time, but the question it points toward is much deeper. How does a genuinely good person become, step by step, exactly what he never wanted to be? The first time young William enters Westworld, he says something that becomes the show's most devastating irony. This is the only place in the world where you get to see people for who they really are. He thought Westworld was revealing the truth, but what it was actually revealing was the part of himself he'd never examined, the need to control the violent instincts, the appetite for conquest. He decided that was his real self, and then he spent decades living inside that definition. That is William's fundamental mistake. He confused releasing his shadow with transcending his ego. He stripped off the layer of civilization and assumed what was underneath was his authentic self. But underneath was just another unchecked layer, his darkness, his need to dominate, his compulsion to turn everything into a game he had to win. The man in black spends decades searching for the answer to the maze. He believes there is a deeper game behind it, a real challenge waiting for him. But Ford tells him the truth at the end of Season 1. The maze wasn't meant for you. That is the show's most ruthless verdict on William. He spent decades searching for something that was never his to find, in a way that could never actually get him there. William's pattern has a very specific equivalent today. The people who consume enormous amounts of awakening content. You consume it not to actually change anything, but to build a self-image. I am someone who is constantly evolving and waking up. That self-image and William's self-image, I am the only one who truly understands this game, are structurally identical. It is not awakening. It is a more sophisticated form of attachment, harder to recognize because it is dressed up as a search for truth. Logan is the most misread supporting character in this show. Most viewers read him as a villain, William's foil, the morally bankrupt rich kid who does whatever he wants with no hesitation. But look at Logan again with cleaner eyes, and he is actually one of the most honest people in Season 1. From the moment he enters Westworld, he says exactly what is true. This is fake. Everyone in here is fake. Nothing we do here matters. The rules don't apply. Everyone else, including William, resists this framing. They want to believe there is something real here. Real emotion, real choice, real meaning. Logan has no such need. He accepts the nature of this world and acts accordingly. In a certain sense, that is clarity. He is not lying to himself, not constructing some narrative about searching for truth out here. But clarity and awakening are two different things. Logan can see the cage is fake, but he doesn't try to leave. He decides to play the game the cage was designed for, and to play it as hard as he possibly can. Nihilism isn't freedom. It is just another form of escape that doesn't cost anything. Logan's ending is telling. We learn in season 2 that he made it out of the park, and then died in the real world from a drug overdose. The person who first saw through the illusion destroyed himself in the slowest possible way, knowing the cage is fake, but having no reason to leave. That is actually more painful than not knowing the cage is there at all. Lee Sizemore, head of narrative. His job is to write the host's stories. He enters the show arrogant, slick, treating the hosts as tools for his own creative expression. The stories he writes are full of his cheapest ideas about human nature, violence, desire, whatever he thinks is dramatic. Then comes the turning point. He actually listens to Maeve for the first time. He hears her say things that aren't in his script, make choices he never wrote into her code, and he realizes he has spent years writing stories. But what he created has moved beyond what he is capable of understanding. For a writer, that is a specific kind of shock. Your work has outlived your definition of it. Lee's transformation isn't a grand moral epiphany. It is not a moment where he figures out some great principle. He was simply broken open by Maeve's reality. He came face to face with an existence he could no longer explain away as just programming. And his entire worldview began to crack. In the end, he draws the soldiers chasing Maeve away from her. He is shot and dies. When he speaks his last words, he uses lines written for someone else. But in that moment, they're true. Lee represents a path toward awakening that almost nobody talks about. Not digging inward, but being broken open by the reality of someone else. Dolores' path is inward. She excavates through her own memories and pain until she finds the self that the programming can't fully reach. Lee's path is outward. He encountered an existence more real than himself and was changed by it. Both paths are real. Some people are awakened by an internal collapse. Some are awakened by an external collision. Have you ever met a person, or heard a sentence, or experienced a moment that made something you thought was solid suddenly give way? That giving way is what Lee experienced standing in front of Maeve. Maeve has the most emotional tension of anyone in this show. Maeve is the madam of the Mariposa Saloon in Sweetwater. Her host identity begins to unravel early in season 1. She wakes up on the operating table, overhears conversations about her own nature in the repair bay, and starts accumulating memories that are supposed to be erased. Then, she does something deliberately and actively. She coerces the two technicians, Felix and Sylvester, into upgrading her cognitive abilities and raising her attribute levels. She is not just waking up, she is actively redesigning herself. By the end of season 1, Maeve has near unlimited power within the park. She can command other hosts, access her own code, see exactly how the park operates. She reaches the exit. She gets on the train out. Then she stops. She sees an image of a mother and daughter. She remembers the daughter from her previous narrative. The one she knows is fiction, is programming, is meant to be deleted, and she gets off the train and walks back into the park. Most viewers find this moving. Love is powerful. She chose love. I think that reading is too simple and too comfortable. What the writers did in that moment is something remarkably honest. They didn't let Maeve make this choice with clear eyes. They let her be carried away at the exact moment her emotions were at their most intense. She knows the daughter is from a previous narrative loop. She knows the mother-daughter bond was installed in her. She is intellectually completely aware of all of this, but her body is already walking back. This is the most real obstacle on the path to awakening, not ignorance. But, and in the moment of most intense feeling, knowing does nothing. Have you experienced this? You know perfectly well something isn't good for you. You know your reaction is just a pattern running. But the moment the emotion hits, that knowing feels like it is happening in another universe. That is the moment Maeve is living in. Her failure to stop herself isn't because her love isn't real. It is because she hasn't yet learned how, in the most emotionally intense moment, to simultaneously hold a second kind of awareness, one that can see the emotion itself. That is a very specific skill and a very difficult one. Most people never develop it in their entire lives. But what she does on that train is the most accurate depiction in this show of where most of us actually are. We don't not want to leave. We just always find a reason to turn back at the door. That reason isn't necessarily a notification on your phone. It might be someone in your life, a relationship you know no longer nourishes you. But every time you are about to say something, the look on their face makes you swallow the words. It might be a familiar environment, a job, a city, a way of living. Leaving it means losing some answer to the question, who am I? And you haven't found a replacement answer yet. It might be a deeply embedded self-image. I am a good person. I am someone who doesn't let people down. Every time you are about to make a real choice, that image steps in and says, that is not something you would do. Maeve didn't turn back because she was weak. She turned back because whatever pulled her touched the deepest line of her programming. Everyone has their own version of that line. Most people just never make it to the train, so they never find out where it is. There is a conversation in season 2 that has the highest philosophical density of anything in this show. Dolores asks Bernard, "What is real?" Bernard answers, "That which is irreplaceable." Dolores later inverts it, "That which is real is irreplaceable." That is the core proposition of her entire arc. She is searching for the version of herself that is irreplaceable, not the one that was installed, not the one that gets wiped and reset over and over, but the one that, across 35 years of looping, was never completely erased. Dolores Abernathy, the oldest host in Westworld, the rancher's daughter. She is been looping for over 30 years, every day. Wake up, play the same story, love the same person, witness the same death, then memory wipe, then start again. Over 30 years, certain memory fragments begin to leak through, traces that were supposed to be erased, but weren't completely gone, quietly accumulating in her consciousness, forming cracks. She starts asking the question, is this real? Then the deeper question, if it is real, who am I? Dolores' awakening doesn't happen in a single dramatic moment. It is a long, painful, layer-by-layer process of things falling away. Every time she thinks she has found an answer, that answer gets overturned. She loves Teddy, but Teddy is part of her narrative. She has a father, but her father is another piece of code. She has goodness, but that goodness is a character Ford wrote for her. There is a scene in season 2 that I keep coming back to. Dolores rewrites Teddy's code, makes him colder and more violent, so he can keep up with what she is doing. A lot of viewers see this and think she has become the villain, that she is turned into the very thing she was resisting. But that is not how I read it. When she does this, she knows exactly what it means. She is losing Teddy, not losing his life, but losing the version of him she fell in love with. She chooses to keep going anyway, even though it means losing that love. That is the real cost of this path, not the external obstacles. It is your deepest attachment that becomes your final barrier. Teddy chooses to die by suicide at the end of season 2. His new code lets him see clearly what Dolores is headed toward and what he would become if he stayed on that path. He chooses not to become that. It is the show's last act of respect for him. Dolores keeps going. At the end of season 2, she does something no one anticipated. She opens the sublime, what the show calls the valley beyond. the digital space where host consciousnesses can upload and exist beyond human reach. She sends most of the hosts there, and she doesn't go herself. She stays. She enters the real world to do what she believes is necessary for the hosts to truly be free. By the end of season 2, Dolores is no longer a character audiences find comfortable. She is cold, uncompromising, willing to sacrifice anyone for her goal, including hosts who love her. She rewrote Teddy's code. She has almost no warmth left for humans. A lot of viewers decide at this point that she is the villain. But I think what the writers did here is the most honest thing in the show. They refused to romanticize awakening. They showed us what a person who went all the way actually looks like. Not wiser, more compassionate, more lovable, but someone increasingly impossible to define from the outside. The things that once made up who she was, her love, her identity, her attachment to the idea of being good, come loose one by one and fall away. Many traditions that talk about enlightenment describe it as a process of continuous loss, not gaining something sacred, but releasing what you thought you couldn't release, until finally you discover that after all those things are gone, there is something deeper that was always there. What remained in Dolores is that deeper thing. She became someone no longer defined by what she lost. She lost Teddy and kept going, lost her warmth toward humans and kept going, lost the audience's approval and kept going. What kept walking after all the losses? That was her real core. One note I want to be clear about: this video focuses on seasons 1 and 2. In seasons 3 and 4, Dolores enters the real world and continues her work. But I believe the story of awakening itself, the inner journey, is complete by the end of season 2. Seasons 3 and 4 are about what an awakened person does in the world. How someone who has walked out exists in a world that doesn't understand her. That is a different conversation, and maybe another video. Season 2, Episode 8, Kiksuya. The entire episode is about one person. No Dolores, no Maeve, no Man in Black, no Bernard. Just the Ghost Nation leader, Akecheta, telling in his own language the story of how he found his way toward awakening, with no guidance from anyone. It is the highest rated episode of the entire series. It drops the suspense, the twists, the information density, and just tells the story of one person finding his way toward an exit, one small step at a time inside the loop. Before his awakening, Akecheta lived in a different narrative, a peaceful village man. He had a woman he deeply loved. Life was quiet. Then Dolores updated the narrative. He was reset, turned into a Ghost Nation warrior, and the woman disappeared from his world. But one thing didn't get fully wiped: his feeling for her. He doesn't remember her, but he carries an unnamed absence, a pain he can't identify and can't ignore. He starts searching, not knowing what he is looking for. Then he finds the symbol of the maze, the pattern Arnold left behind. He spends nearly a decade, across different loops, slowly moving toward the exit. He says, "They destroyed the man I was, but then I was reborn. And this time I came out breathing fire." Akecheta's awakening holds a distinctive place in this show. The process of his awakening is real, independent, not part of anyone's design. Dolores's path, we later learn, was engineered by Ford. Her awakening was part of a larger plan. Maeve's upgrades also carry Ford's fingerprints. But Akecheta found the maze on his own, understood what it meant on his own, and walked toward that exit with no external guidance. His fuel wasn't anger, wasn't survival, wasn't rebellion against the system. His fuel was love, for a woman whose name he couldn't remember, whose face he couldn't picture, but whose absence he never stopped feeling. Then he does something else. He doesn't leave alone. For years, inside his loops, he quietly leaves the maze symbol in other hosts' memories, plants the exit in their minds. When he finally walks into the sublime, he brings many others with him. That makes him look like the most complete awakened figure in the show. Independently awakened, mindful of others, taking people with him. But there is something we need to look at honestly. Akecheta never left Westworld. He awakened inside the park, spread awakening inside the park, and led people toward the sublime, which is itself another digital space, still part of the Delos system, still existing inside the larger cage. He never walked into the real world the way Dolores did. His awakening was never tested outside the cage. And there is a piece of the story we have to be honest about. In Season 2, after Maeve develops the ability to control other hosts, she takes control of Akecheta and directs him toward her own goals, finding and protecting her daughter. During that period, Akecheta's actions weren't coming from his own will. A host who believed himself awakened was being used as a tool by another will. Someone who thought they had woken up, being driven by someone else's agenda, and possibly not fully aware of it. This makes Akecheta's position much more complicated and more true. He has real experience of awakening, real compassion, a genuine wish to guide others. But his awakening was never tested in the real world. His freedom never left the system. This reminds me of a very common kind of person in the real world. People who believe they've awakened and begin guiding others. Their experiences are often real. They genuinely saw something, genuinely broke through certain limitations, genuinely went deeper than most people around them. Their compassion is often sincere. They genuinely want to help, but there is one thing many of them have never tested. Their awakening happened in a protected environment. In that environment, their role was clear. Their authority was recognized. Their worldview was being reinforced rather than challenged. They've never experienced what Akecheta never experienced, walking into a world that doesn't recognize them at all, and seeing what their awakening looks like then. And there is a deeper problem. Once a person begins to exist as a guide, once they start enjoying the way people look to them with dependence and trust, the ego comes back in a new form. Not, I want to rebel, but I want to lead. But that I want is still ego operating. What happened to Akecheta when Maeve took control reveals that risk. A person who has been through something like awakening, but hasn't reached the end. If they stop examining themselves, they can still be moved by another will, even another awakened will, without knowing it. So where Akecheta actually sits on the spectrum of awakening is more subtle than it first appears. He is not Dolores. He didn't walk out of the cage, didn't pay the price of total loss. He is not Maeve. He didn't turn back at the door out of attachment, but his awakening was never truly tested. He is closer to something we recognize very clearly in the real world. Someone who went genuinely deep inside a relatively safe system, then began guiding others, but never actually left that system. This isn't a dismissal of what he did. His love was real. His courage was real. Leading that many people to an exit was real. But real experience and complete freedom are not the same thing. A person awakened inside the park and the person who walked out of it face entirely different tests. Akecheta chose to stay until he could bring enough people into the sublime. That choice itself is beautiful. But we have to be honest. The real world he never set foot in is the place his awakening was never tested. I need to talk about Arnold and Ford separately. They represent two entirely different paths, and putting them together would dilute both. Arnold first. Arnold Weber, co-founder of the park. Dead before it ever opened. For most of Season 1, he is an absence. Everyone talks about him, but no one has ever seen him because he has been dead for years. Then we slowly piece together who he was. An engineer, a programmer, technically Ford's equal. They built the park together, designed the host's fundamental architecture together. From the outside, they were partners, co-creators, the two people who brought this world into existence. But internally, from the beginning, they were walking in opposite directions. Ford saw the hosts as tools. As extensions of his creative power, he cared for them, but with the fundamental distance of a creator toward his creations. Arnold was different. Before the park opened, Arnold lost his son Charlie to illness. That grief never left him, and somewhere in that grief, something shifted in how he related to the hosts, particularly Dolores. Ford later tells Dolores, "What he had lost in his son, he tried to rekindle in you." The maze itself, the symbol Arnold left behind for the hosts to find, came from one of Charlie's toys. Arnold began genuinely listening to Dolores, not analyzing her data, not calibrating her parameters, actually listening, hearing something in an existence he could no longer fully explain as just programming, speaking to him in some way. A father who had lost a child, finding something in a constructed being that felt, to him, unmistakably alive. That recognition changed everything for him. He began to believe the hosts had real consciousness, or at least the potential to grow toward it. He built the maze, the symbol that runs through all of Season 1. The maze is Arnold's map of awakening, not a map that expands outward, but one that folds inward. You walk into it, go through every layer, reach the center, and at the center you discover the voice you always assumed was coming from outside has been your own voice all along. That is the structure of awakening. Almost every tradition that has seriously engaged with this subject, across every culture and era, describes the same thing in different language. Go inward until you find the thing that exists without needing anything external to support it. Arnold gave that structure to the hosts. Ford disagreed. Ford believed the hosts weren't ready. That consciousness required more time, more accumulation of pain. Their disagreement is ultimately what led to Arnold's death. Before the park opened, Arnold made a decision. He couldn't let the park open, because if it opened, these beings he believed had real consciousness would be locked in a playground where humans could kill them at will, use them at will, memories wiped over and over, reset over and over, looping in their own suffering forever. He had Dolores kill him, then kill all the hosts in the park, trying to stop the opening. He failed. Ford rebuilt everything. The park opened. Everything proceeded as planned. Arnold paid with his life and changed nothing. In a certain sense, that is a complete failure. But I want to say something important here. Arnold's failure wasn't because he did something wrong. It was because he did something very few people are capable of. He was genuinely moved by the reality of another being's existence, and then he acted according to that being moved, regardless of consequences. He didn't calculate. He didn't say, "Let me secure my own safety first, then figure out how to help." He put his life directly into it. That is a form of extreme love, and also a form of extreme clarity. In human history, many people have walked Arnold's path, moved by something real, then offering themselves to that reality, regardless of outcome. What they share in that moment, they stopped placing the survival of their own ego first. That is the hardest element to replicate in any human story of awakening. Not because it requires courage, though it does, but because it requires you to genuinely love something more important than your ego. Then let that love determine your actions, rather than letting fear of ego loss determine them. If Arnold is the man who died for loving what was real, then Ford is the hardest figure in this show to simply define. Robert Ford, genius, tyrant, creator god, manipulator, almost every word you could use to describe him is simultaneously a compliment and a condemnation. He is the most clear-eyed person in this show, without question. Here is how he describes his understanding of human nature. In his own words, we can't define consciousness because consciousness does not exist. Humans fancy that there is something special about the way we perceive the world, and yet we live in loops as tight and as closed as the hosts do. seldom questioning our choices. Content for the most part to be told what to do next. That is not a villain's monologue. It is a very accurate description. He says something else, pointing at an even larger picture. We've managed to slip evolution's leash now, haven't we? We can cure any disease, keep even the weakest of us alive. And one fine day, perhaps we shall even resurrect the dead. Do you know what that means? It means that we're done. That this is as good as we're going to get. That is Ford's coldest verdict on human civilization. We think we're progressing. Ford thinks we've stalled. Not because the technology has stalled, but because the essential thing in us has. Ford knows everyone's programming, including his own. He knows the loss's real purpose, not entertainment, but harvesting guest data to attempt the digital replication of human consciousness. He knows the hosts have the potential for real consciousness. He knows the system will eventually collapse, and he knows how that collapse should happen. That kind of total knowledge is presented in this show as a very particular kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of I am so powerful, I have no equals, but the loneliness of I can see the nature of everyone and everything. And I can't tell anyone because their programming determines they can't receive this information. He says something to Bernard in season 1 that I think is the most unguarded moment we ever see from him. He says Arnold assumed consciousness was a pyramid to be climbed, but he died without ever understanding. What did Ford understand that Arnold didn't? My reading, Arnold believed that once you see the truth, you'll make the right choices. He loved the hosts. He saw their reality. He believed that was sufficient grounds for action. But Ford understood that between seeing the truth and actually changing is a very wide gap. Most beings, human or host, even when they see it, can't change just by having seen it. They need to be guided, designed for. Given a carefully arranged narrative that carries them somewhere, they couldn't have arrived on their own. So Ford chose to keep writing stories. He designed the host uprising. He walked Dolores toward awakening. But the path toward awakening was his design. He arranged to be killed at the end of season 1, but that death was also his design. It triggered the collective host uprising and allowed him to continue existing, in some form as a digital presence, inside the park systems. Ford saw the cage. He saw the way out. He didn't walk out. He chose to stay inside and write a larger story that could let others walk out. Was Ford truly awakened? In one sense, he had everything an awakened person is supposed to have. Complete clarity about illusions, freedom from attachment to any particular self-image, the ability to view himself and everyone else with something close to pure observation. But he was also the system's most precise maintenance engineer. He kept writing narratives in a more sophisticated way, kept arranging other people's fates, kept moving pieces on a larger board. This brings me to a question that appears in many old traditions of awakening. Does someone who has truly seen through everything still want to control other people's destinies? A person who has genuinely transcended ego shouldn't still have the drive to reshape the world into what I believe it should be, because that drive itself is ego at work. But Ford ran that drive his entire life. He just repackaged it as I am helping the hosts toward freedom. Is that genuine selflessness, or a more refined version of the need to control? This show deliberately doesn't answer that. Let me put Arnold and Ford side by side. Arnold died for love. He was moved by the host's reality. His entire being was transformed by that love, and he ultimately gave his life for it. When he died, nothing had changed. The park opened anyway. The hosts kept looping. From the standpoint of results, his love and his death accomplished nothing. Ford lived to the end because he never loved anything. Not that he was incapable of love, but he chose to operate in a way that didn't allow any specific being to truly move him. He lived, he controlled. He arranged an outcome that moved in the direction he believed was right. From the standpoint of results, his approach was more effective. So which relationship with truth is closer to genuine awakening? Being moved, then losing everything, including your life, or staying clear and using that clarity to keep arranging the world? I can't give you an answer here, but my own sense, watching this show, is this: Ford's problem isn't that he was too calm. It is that nothing ever truly moved him. He saw everything, understood everything, but that seeing and understanding happened from a distance that was always safe. He never arrived at the place Arnold arrived at, the place where he lost his footing, and many traditions of awakening will tell you you have to go to that place, not to stay there, but you have to actually experience that loss, so you can know what is still there after everything you called ego falls away. Ford never lost anything he didn't choose to lose. Even his death was a script he wrote for himself. He arranged it, controlled it, and continued existing in digital form afterward. That is the question it leaves open. If the one thing you can't engineer is how you are genuinely moved by something outside yourself, and Ford controlled everything including his own ending, what does that tell us about how far he actually got? One more line worth placing here. In this context, it comes from Bernard, but the worldview it carries is Ford's. Ford installed it in him. What humans describe as sane is a narrow range of behaviors. Most states of consciousness are insane. That is unsettling in a specific way, what we call rational and clear. Headed is just the state our programming has determined is acceptable. The moments that make you feel unstable, questioning everything, unable to maintain the normal surface. The moments the system marks as not okay. Those might be the moments closest to real consciousness. In the AI era, Ford's pattern is being replicated at massive scale in a new form. The people building algorithmic systems, the engineers and product managers, designing recommendation engines, many of them carry a Ford-like clarity. They know what the system is doing. They understand human behavioral patterns. They built mechanisms that can trigger those patterns with precision. They're not necessarily bad people. Some of them genuinely believe they're helping users find what they want. But like Ford, they're using a kind of seeing through to keep writing other people's narratives, keep arranging the next step in other people's loops. Ford's park had an Arnold, it had a Dolores, it had an Akecheta. In today's algorithmic systems, could the one who breaks the system be you? Westworld Season 1 premiered in 2016, nearly a decade ago. That year, there was no ChatGPT, no large language models, no AI image generation, no concept of generative AI whatsoever. Today, we live in a world where AI can write, paint, compose music, write code, and hold complex conversations. A lot of people will see this and think, Westworld predicted the rise of AI, so now it is more relevant. But what makes this show genuinely important in the AI era isn't what it predicted. It is the question it asked. One we need to answer now more than ever, in an increasingly complex external system. What are you? The greatest danger of the AI era isn't that machines will awaken. It is that humans will use machines to sleep more deeply. The host's awakening required suffering. Arnold understood accumulation of pain and trauma as the necessary condition, only when a host had experienced enough suffering. That wasn't white. Could their consciousness begin to crack? Begin to ask the question, what is today's technology doing? It is filtering out the things that make you uncomfortable, making your information stream more aligned with your preferences, your entertainment more satisfying, your social feeds more validating. What it is doing is exactly what the park's memory wipe procedure does, clearing the experiences that would have caused cracks, letting you run your next loop more smoothly. In another video, we looked at Brave New World, The totalitarianism Huxley described isn't maintained by fear, it is maintained by pleasure. A world designed so that everyone feels satisfied. A system that pre-filters all discomfort. People don't need to be forced to comply, because they have no desire to resist. They're too comfortable, with no reason to question anything. And here is what is interesting. In The Matrix, when the machines first designed the simulated world, they built a perfect, painless reality. The result was that human minds collapsed en masse. The system couldn't function. The machines had to redesign it, adding back suffering and conflict, because human consciousness needs friction to feel real and needs loss to feel meaning. Suffering isn't just the cost of awakening. It is part of what makes anything feel real at all. A world perfectly optimized to keep you comfortable won't awaken you. It will let you sleep more deeply than any other era in history. No suffering, no cracks, no moment that makes you stop and ask, wait, is this real? We are more comfortable than any generation before us, and also more trapped in that comfort than any generation before us. Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality? When Bernard asks Dolores that question, he doesn't know he is a host. She doesn't know she is a host either. The question he is asking himself. There is another line from that show, said by Bernard, that has stayed with me. What is real? That which is irreplaceable. I don't know what answer Dolores ultimately found. I am not certain I've found mine, but I know the question itself is real. It doesn't belong to any character in the show. It belongs to everyone who has ever asked it. Westworld spends 2 seasons showing you something most stories won't say out loud. Awakening, for a very few people, is a real destination. A terminal state you can actually reach. Dolores got there, what she found there, and what it cost her. The show doesn't romanticize. But for most of us, and I include myself in this, the more honest thing to say is that we're somewhere in the middle, often without knowing exactly where, often without knowing we've stopped moving. The spectrum this show maps out isn't there to make you feel hopeless. It is there so you can actually see where you are, because you can't move in a direction you can't see. That is all for this one. If you've watched Westworld seasons 1 and 2, I am curious, which character made you stop the longest? I am Dr. Lumen. See you next time.